So it's just about 6 o'clock and we have a lot of information here tonight. So I tend to run the program from on time and move it right along. So I hope you're ready for a lot of information. I'm really glad to see this many people here. It lifts my spirits because I work on this almost every day on the pollinators and what we can do about them. But I want to start with something every person in this room already loves, and that's our lakes. Wentworth, Crescent, Winnipesaukee, these waters define our town. Tonight, it's about protecting the place we love, the water we depend upon, the wildlife that is still here, and the future we want our children and grandchildren to still inherit. The future of our lakes is not someone else's responsibility. It's in our hands. My name's Tanya. I was born in Wolfeboro, and I've recently returned to my grandfather's property, Allen Albee, and it was an interesting thing to find out the change that's happened to Wolfeboro since I was a child and now back at the same water, and ultimately seeing such a difference. You know, when I was a kid, you could scoop up the minnows in the lake. There were always crayfish under every rock. There were so many fresh water mussels that you would just, actually it'd be a pain in the neck. You know, you'd be skipping them on the water, but they're just so much, they'd hurt your feet. Now it's like, try to find them. And that's concerning to me, and that's a problem, I think, that we should be looking at and figuring out what is it. You know, we had septic systems when I was a kid, so we still have septic systems. It can't just be septic systems. It's got to be more to the problem. So we started by hiring researchers about a year ago. We ultimately became what's called the Six-Legged Society, which is just a small group of us. We work with scientists and local organizations like New Hampshire Audubon, the Trout Unlimited. We work with the Xerxes Society. If you're familiar with them, they work with invertebrates. And wanted to ask these experts, you know, what are we starting to see here and what's happening? And what we ultimately learned was that the smallest creatures around us, the insects, have an issue. And it's not a side issue. And they might be small, but they're important. They're the foundation of what we have in our world. We've got wide support, but here's where it starts. Many of you have noticed fewer crayfish, I'm sure, like I said. But tonight, I'm going to hopefully give you information on three things: why it matters that we are missing them, how this hits your wallet, and what you can do tomorrow morning to start improving some of the situations for these creatures. It's a hopeful presentation, although there's some information that's a little bit difficult, I would say. When I was a kid, one of my father's favorite road trips was to Pop's Clam Shack in Alton. Fried clams, onion rings, anybody ever been? And when we got there, the windshield was always covered with bugs. So by the time we got ready to come back from our greasy food fix, we had to clean the windshield off. But I still love fried clams today, but at the end of the day, where did the bugs go? Do any of you have to scrub your windshield off anymore, or your headlights? And the answer is pretty much no. They're gone. Science says they're down about 45%. And you can change this. Nature isn't broken beyond repair, but it's certainly struggling. And it's waiting for us to do something. We caused the problem, and now we can fix it. Too many buttons here. So wildlife vanishes quietly. And we learned that it wasn't just one thing happening to these insects and creatures. It was a variety of things. It's what we spray. It's what we light up at night. It's what we plant. And I have to say that I'm as guilty as anybody. I used to ignore all three. Everything was man-made. I bought my flowers based on color. If that looked pretty and had a good bloom, I didn't ask any more questions. I was happy. I had lights on all night. I didn't think about it because there was an abundance. There was an abundance of moths and caterpillars. But now it's not the same. But nature is like a bank account. I was making my withdrawals for the last 20 years, like with weed and feed and irrigation and so forth. But now it's time for me to make some deposits. But the good news is nature pays its interest fast. When we reduce chemicals, leave habitat, plant native plants, protect buffers on the lake, life can rebound quickly. Many of you have noticed this as fewer birds. 3 billion birds is 1/3 of our total bird population in my lifetime that we have lost, vanished, gone. And when you ask why it's so quiet, 1/3 are gone. And that's not sustainable. If that'll happen in our lifetime, imagine what happens to the next generation. There's no signs of fish often. There's no movement in the trees. One day, Bob and I were down on the patio, and I turned to him and I said, something's really off. And we sat there, we realized it was the quiet. There was no noise. There was nothing in the trees. There was no movement. I mean, it wasn't just one afternoon that week. We went down every day, and it was all week. So that's what started our deep dive. And to quote E.O. Wilson, does anyone here know E.O. Wilson? He's the famous scientist from Harvard who spent his life working on insects. Well, he said it's the little things that run the world, and he also has a great documentary on TV, and he's right. So the insect eaters are declining the fastest of the bird population, and the question is, what can we do? So the chickadees are interesting because we all have chickadees. We all love those little guys because they're brave little ones. But, you know, there's a 6,000 chickadees, 6,000 moths to save a chickadee. That's a lot of moths or caterpillars. They require that for one baby to grow to be an adult. So and the mom can only go about 150 yards for her traveling to find these. So it's not like she can go to Ossipee from my house, or she can go downtown and pick up a caterpillar. That's too far. She has to be within a certain small range in my yard to feed her babies. And if she does not have enough of those caterpillars, the baby will die, starvation. And that's exactly what's happening. What we're going to find out is that one of the things I don't know if anybody have heard of is a pesticide called neonicotinoid. That's a word that's sort of crazy. It's sort of like the version of DDT is some long 20-letter word, and I can't say it. So I'm going to just call them neonics. And why haven't you heard of this? Well, there's a variety of reasons. Some of it is that the pesticide companies who create these have very conveniently made it so there's very few labeling requirements. When you buy this pesticide at Bradley's or your tick treatment or the various places where it's found, there's no disclosure required. And so it's very easy not to understand that you're buying something that'll kill birds, kills our bees. This chemical here, this neonicotinoid, is 5,000 times more toxic to a bee than DDT was. So if that doesn't give you pause, I mean, we thought DDT was the worst thing we might have ever seen in our lifetime, but in fact, it isn't. But you're not alone if you haven't heard of it, because really very few people seem to have heard of it at all, except the scientists and the people that work at Xerxes who notice this kind of thing. But where is it? You know, what's unusual is it's a family of pesticides. It's all those names up there. Now, I'm not expecting anybody to remember any of them because it's very hard to do. Imidacloprid is probably the most common one you'll find. Like when you go to Bradley's, it's on some of the things at Bradley's that we've got over there. And, you know, you want to kill a bug. You're not realizing that you're also killing all the birds and bees, all the insects in the lake. It's running off and it's harming everything. Nobody realizes this. Why would they? The labeling on the back of the chemicals things are so long and the font is so little that nobody can really read that stuff. So that goes back to some of the legislation. I'm only going to touch on this briefly because this is really about lakes, but there's a corn seed that gets treated, that the farmers plant, that's treated with this pesticide. And when it's planted, only 5% is taken up by the plant. 95% of it goes into the water. It washes off into the soil and into the waterways. And that's why it's been found all over the country. So take this apple, for example. The neonics are systemic. And what that means is if this apple tree that this grew on was sprayed, and I try to wash it off, rub it on my shirt and get rid of the neonics, the answer is you can't. Systemic pesticides are in the plant. You cannot get rid of them. So if you're a bee and you go to a plant to pick up the pollen from something that was growing that was sprayed or injected with neonics, you've now got the poison on you. And if you make it back to the hive, you're taking the poison with you. If you're a bird and you eat a corn seed that's sitting on the ground that has this treatment on it, it will kill a small songbird immediately. I mean, it's incredibly toxic, this stuff. But it's also, surprisingly enough, your tick treatments. This is interesting. So when you give your dog or your cat, we were giving our cat the tick treatment, squirting it on his back, and he always looked like he had the flu. So we felt bad for him, but we didn't think much about it. We thought, no ticks, good. But at the end of the day, this stuff is going into them as a neurological agent, so it's also hard on your dog. But that's not the biggest concern we have here. When your dog, everybody's dog likes to jump in the lake and get a stick, If you've just given them this treatment, you're contaminating the lakes. So, and it does, let's say he also sleeps with you. I think that's another thing. At least my cat sleeps with me. When you pat them, it's also going all over you. When they've examined pregnant women in New Hampshire, Dartmouth did a study. Inside of every pregnant woman was this pesticide. And this is a neurological agent. So that means as a baby grows, that's its worst time. This is neurological, it affects them. And they are saying that it's safe, but we have medical reports indicating that they question that and they do not think that's true. So, but neonics are designed to kill insects. I mean, that's very true. So they do that. But the problem is they don't do just one insect. They don't say, okay, I'm going to go after the mosquito that's biting me, or I'm going after this other one, that aphid or something. They kill them all. And there's the rub. So that's where we're losing our butterflies and our bees, our dragonflies. And then when it rains, it goes off the thing that we squirted it with, and it goes into the waterways. The other thing that's interesting about neonics is how toxic it is in small quantities. And people don't understand this because it takes a minute amount. It's measured in parts per billion. So if I took this coffee can, let's figure it's a pound coffee can, I think it might be close. And I took 2 of these and dumped them with neonics into Lake Wentworth, I would have the ability to kill pretty much every aquatic invertebrate in that lake. That little, these 2 cans. So hopefully there's no terrorists in the audience that want to contaminate the lake, but the point is that it's a very toxic chemical, and it's also being used like when you spray your lawns, you spray your plants, and then you get people saying, well, it's safe to spray. It is not safe to spray, not if you want to have the insects live. So this matters for a number of reasons, and one of them is that, if we let the lake quality continue downhill, the property values go with it. And I think most of us live here because we love New Hampshire, we love what surrounds us, and what's here naturally. And I think that's part of what makes it beautiful. But, children are now swimming in it. The cyanobacteria is getting worse, and that's all relative to this, because when you lose your good insects, that means that, like, the zooplankton is allowed to eat the algae, they can expand. And tourism is really important to Wolfeboro and to everybody's economy in New Hampshire. It's the number 2 driver in New Hampshire for the economy. This is impacting it. And so the question is, are we going to do something about it? These 2 cans, just to clarify, it's the EPA chronic benchmark that I'm quoting for the level of toxicity. And that's a questionable benchmark because things like mayflies and caddisflies die much faster than the benchmark. But they also, they kill the things that fight the cyanobacteria, and that's really the point. Our kids, we want them to be able to swim in clean water. When I was a kid, there was never any cyanobacteria warnings. And I think that, last year, did any of you look at the newspaper or the warning saying, please don't swim, don't let your dogs in the lake? I mean, some of us saw those warnings, and they were a little bit scary. This is the Wolfeboro economy. This is our economy. And this is important to all of us. So what are the consequences of some of this? These are some of the things. We just took the pictures of them from Bradley's, and I'm not knocking Bradley's because they have every right to sell these products. But all I'm trying to indicate is that when you use any of these pesticide chemicals, the level of contamination that can happen. And the one that says tree and shrub, for example, that is an imidacloprid. The one that says safer on it, I mean, that would be the one that I'd buy if I didn't read the label. I'd be thinking, it's probably safer. It says so. And there's no warnings on it for bees or toxicity. But in fact, they're all just bee killers. So that's the problem. And the question is, are these working? Well, if they solve the problem, we would expect fewer ticks, fewer mosquitoes, and healthier ecosystems. But that's not what we're seeing. Spraying and fogging kills the beneficial insects. It kills the butterflies, the bees, the moths, the dragonflies, and all the insects that feed the fish and the birds. And natural spray, I know that there's been some people in town that have been approached saying that there's a natural spray that can be applied and that should solve it. Well, it isn't natural, it's an insecticide. And that particular natural spray is the most toxic applicant that they have for killing fish. So for our fish population, it's incredibly dangerous. Meanwhile, what can you do? So I think the good news is there's answers to some of this. So before you glaze over thinking it's all bad news, it's not all bad news. You could use a mosquito bucket. Now, this probably looks pretty simplistic, but it saves you money. And Doug Tallamy is going to talk about this in a second. But, you know, if you don't want to just run a fan and blow the mosquitoes away, a mosquito bucket, you put water in this 5-gallon bucket, a few pieces of grass, a quarter of a dunk, and put a few around your yard, and that will be a mosquito killer. You won't have baby mosquitoes. It's pretty simple compared to spraying, and it won't kill all the rest of the good bugs. The other thing to know is that when it comes to Lyme disease, because that's a serious thing to worry about, and ticks are important for us to face off with and not have a problem with Lyme disease because it is serious, and that is that the CDC has indicated that the spraying does not reduce Lyme disease. So is it working? It's working killing insects, but it's not reducing Lyme.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Tallamy, and I want to talk to you today about a really serious environmental problem that we have, mosquito fogging. It's a booming business around the country, and there's two big problems with it. First, it doesn't control mosquitoes, but it does kill everything else. It kills our monarchs. It kills our pollinators. It kills our natural enemies. It kills the caterpillars that feed our birds. The important thing is it's doing all that for nothing. There is no evidence that mosquito fogging actually controls mosquito populations anywhere in the country. Now, fortunately, homeowners do have agency here. It's called mosquito dunks. Homegrown National Park has a mosquito bucket challenge program that targets larvae. That's how you control mosquitoes in the larval stage, not adults. It's cheap, it doesn't kill anything else, and it works. We want to control pest mosquitoes. We don't want to eliminate nature. Thanks.
So that's Doug Tallamy, and next Tuesday, he's going to be speaking at 1 o'clock at the Episcopal Church for the Garden Club, and that's open to everybody, that event. And he is a brilliant man who also helped the state of New Hampshire and Representative McDonald with the corn legislation that we presented. When we spoke to him, he's the one who indicated that these corn seeds that are treated are damaging our bird populations and our water more than any other single thing that we have in New Hampshire. And it was his guidance and information that led us to present one piece of the legislation. So there are other things you can do. So what he's also indicating is that there's other tick treatments. There are natural treatments. You don't have to use some of these toxic ones. You can use deep, tuck your pants in, do a tick check just like you used to do, and that works. Shower after going outside when you come in, that first works. And one of the hacks I just saw was if you take one of those lint rollers from like to get the stuff off your clothes and put that on you, roll it over you when you first go in, that picks up a lot of the little ticks. I thought that was a little clever. So you might want to try that. So we can protect our families and we can protect the water at the same time. We don't have to choose between the two. And I think that's the takeaway for this. And pollinators, they're the canary in the coal mine. I mean, I think butterflies and bees, particularly honeybees, get the big press. Everybody talks about the honeybees. Well, our honeybees are not native bees, and they're a nice bee and everything, but they're not natives. And the natives are suffering the most because they're harder to document. They usually are solitary. They live in the ground. They need an area where there's no mulch and they can dig down into the ground. I know, like, your bees are out, right? Your minor bees. And our minor bees just came out yesterday. So they're tiny, they're friendly, they're not going to sting you, but they pollinate amazingly well. But they're struggling. And they're struggling because of the same thing, the pesticides. And then also removing your leaves. You probably can read that on the screen, that when you scrape away your leaves or blow them, the blower, their bees are this big. They can't live through that blower. When you rake away your leaves before it gets to be 50 degrees for at least 5 days in the row, those pollinators haven't emerged yet. So the fireflies, the bees, they're all in there. And so removing all your leaf litter that drives you crazy, and it drove me crazy. I used to have a lawn that looked like it was vacuumed, but no longer, because I know they're living in there, and I don't want to lose them all because we're losing them too fast. So they're all an integral part of our food system. They provide food to the birds. We need all of them because these small things are not small. 1/3 of the food we eat is pollinated by bees. The rusty patch bumblebee, if any of you see a rusty patch bumblebee, it used to be the most common bumblebee in our New Hampshire natural world. But the Extension Service and the research they've been doing, they haven't found one in 15 years. So it's virtually, and they're calling it extinct now. Our most common bumblebee. So it's got a little rusty, on the bumblebee card I have over there, it shows what they look like. But they do have a little rusty spot right on their little bottom. And they're very cute and fuzzy. But if you see one, I'd call the Extension Service and say you maybe found one, because they can't find one. And I'm hoping somebody finds one. The other thing to know is, the big bumblebees that are flying around right now? They're out in May because that's the queen bee. And she's just looking for a place to start up her hive. And so only in May you see the big queen bee bumblebees flying around. So when you look at her, know that she's looking for a place to start a new hive, which is pretty sweet. And the other ones, like I said, that are out right now are the minor bees. And those are just the little teeny guys that need a bare piece of ground and a little mud, and they make their holes, their little lives in little holes, and they only last for a few months. So aquatic insects. The neonics, the reason this is part of this whole integral part in the lakes is the neonics enter our lakes through runoff. So if someone has removed their buffer zone, or it's gotten disintegrated, or they've chosen to have a view that they feel it should be unencumbered and they cut everything down, even though it's not legal to do that, it happens all the time, and they've planted a big turf lawn, that means they've got to take care of that turf lawn if they want to make it green. All of it's running into the water. When it gets into the water, it's contaminating. And those aquatic invertebrates are paying the price. And that's where it leads to the story of fewer everything, of the fewer crayfish, the fewer freshwater mussels, all of them. So I don't know about you, but when I was little, the dragonflies would be like a swarm, like a lair over the lake. I loved that. And they were every color. There were just so many to look at. It was just amazing. Just like at night, the lights, you'd have a pile of bugs, dead bugs in the morning outside your night light. It was like fascinating to look at that pile of bugs. Now you have a light on all night long, and there's not many bugs underneath it. And I don't see swarms. I see dragonflies, but I don't see many. Part of that reason is the dragonflies spend the first 2 years of their life in the water. So once they come out of the water, then they only live for a short while above the ground. And if you want to get rid of mosquitoes, they eat over 100 a day. So we're sort of killing off our mosquito control. And I think that, that's an important thing to consider. So our fish and turtles. According to the Fish and Game, 9 of 11 amphibian species of the greatest conservation need are threatened by pesticides. I mean, it sort of goes everywhere. And I think it seems sort of simple in a way and complicated in another way to stop spraying chemicals. This is a man-made problem. This isn't the natural world that figured this out by itself. When you think about a dragonfly, they've been around for 300 million years. A lot longer than us, or, well, not maybe as long as me, but a long time. And you think that they lived through past the dinosaurs, they lived through the Ice Age, and now, in my generation, they're struggling because of stuff that we're doing. And I find that really difficult. And when I see like the turtles out there, and I hope that they're getting enough to eat, you hope, the birds, you hope that they're getting enough to eat, but we can solve this if we work to help them. Then we get the new one, the spiny water flea. Now, has everybody heard of the spiny water flea? I hadn't heard of him until a week ago. Okay, all right, everybody's up on it. But so this thing is not in Wentworth, but when it first got to the United States, it was in one of the Great Lakes, and it got to all the Great Lakes. It infested it so quickly that it only took it 3 years to spread into all the Great Lakes. It got into Winnipesaukee, and there is no treatment for the spiny flea. And the reason that's up on the board tonight is because it works with the neonics in collaboration to go after the zooplankton and makes that good stuff that eats the bad stuff, the algae, even less, because they work together to kill more of our good stuff. And the spiny flea is not in Wentworth or Crescent that we know of. So the question is, can we keep it out? It's going to be tricky, but I don't know, does anybody here fish? There we go. So if you fish and you go between lakes, they're asking that you wash all your equipment off, but you dry it 140-degree water. Or if you see some kids, well, that's what we do on the rail trail. If we see kids fishing, we give them the information on the spiny flea to make sure they know even their bucket of water, they can't just dump it from lake to lake because it can carry the spiny flea. And that weird picture at the bottom that looks fuzzy, it sort of looks like an old pipe cleaner. That's what they look like on your fishing line. But that's thousands of eggs. And once it gets in the lake, we can't get it out of there. So we're trying to not have it enter the lakes, and that's important. The other thing that they do is, as I mentioned, these stressors work together. So when you have the neonics and you have the spiny flea working together against the quality of the lake, it doesn't help us. And if we can't get the spiny flea out, we can at least look at getting the neonics and the pesticides out. That's the choice we have. That's the power we have. And if it's our property, then we have the right on our property to make some of these decisions. So here's another solution, because I've been certainly going through the problems, and it sounds like a little dense and heavy for a Friday night, and you probably all want a beer now. So let's look a little bit at the solutions. Building back a buffer zone is a great solution. Expanding the buffer zone is a great solution. Removing turf is a great solution. And doing this with native plants, because the native plants feed all of our insects. If you plant a Bradford pear tree, almost nothing lives in a Bradford pear. If you plant an oak tree, you've got 900 species living in it. Our native plants work. And on that list I gave you today, I think I gave you how much each plant is supported. And if you didn't get the plant list, it is over on the table. And it's a really good list to have. It tells you the most important native plants. It tells you sun or shade. And that came from the Wildlife Federation. It's a great list. But if you have a neighbor who doesn't know what the value is of their buffer zone, it could be really good, without being aggressive, because we don't want you to get thrown out of their house, to explain to them what the value is of a buffer zone, what you're trying to work with. Same with the chemicals. Explain to them the alternatives. The buffer zone can absorb more of the runoff than anything else that we do. So, you've got the salt entering the lake. It's not just neonics. It's not just pesticides. There's other stuff going into the lake. It's just that it's all building up like a big lasagna. And, I think at the end of the day, it doesn't taste as good as lasagna. We have a lake that we can't swim in. So we want to slow this down and turn this around. And when you go to buy your native plants, I want to give you a little advice. The plants I put over there on the table are all natives. They're from a nursery over near Concord. They're all grown without any pesticides. But you can't just go to the local nursery and say, if it says native on the little pot, that doesn't mean you're safe to buy it, unfortunately. They could have grown those with the neonics in them. And it's systemic, like I said, so you can't get rid of it. It's a toxic plant. So you have to make sure you're getting something that is grown without neonics. If the nursery doesn't know, my best advice is to not buy it from that particular nursery. Spiderweb has Van Berkom plants if you ask them for them, so you could go to Spiderweb. I know that Bear Camp has some over in Ossipee, so if you went there. So they are available. And this one that we've got over here, Bagley Pond, if you want to drive over there, that's where I go and pick them up. She's got a great selection of great plants. But make sure you're careful with the plant. Because when I started this whole quest to be a native plant gardener, I didn't know that. So I planted some very toxic plants unknowingly, because it's easy to unwittingly make a mistake and not know that it didn't help. I also didn't know there were keystone plants some plants provide so much more value to our natural world than others. A blueberry bush. That's really, really important. Goldenrod. It does not make you sneeze, folks. That is not true. That's a myth. That's an old wives' tale. Goldenrod's a keystone plant. Fall asters. These are incredibly important. And those are our flowers. Now, our trees and shrubs, they're the workhorses. So what could you do if you've got this lawn that looks like Monticello? How could you fix that? Well, in the middle of your lawn, you could plant a pollinator island. I'm not suggesting that you just scrape up your whole lawn, because nobody is probably going to do that. But what I am suggesting is that you could look at this critically and say, could I plant a tree somewhere? Could I put a soft landing under that tree for the pollinators? What could I do on my property? Could I not rake away the leaves? What else could I do? Could I stop blowing? Could I stop pesticides? Something on this list might be interesting to you. Could I not? Here's an easy one. Maybe if you have a light that's on all night, just turn the switch off. That one you could do tonight if you're doing it. And then you're probably saving a chickadee potentially, because you're providing more food for that chickadee. So there's easy things you can do. And for Mother's Day, here's a big tip. You could buy her a native plant. You could buy her, I'll give you something else you can do for your mom. You can buy one of these light bulbs if she likes her light on all night long. That's a motion sensor right in the light bulb. Just switch the light bulb for her. I bet she's not getting anybody else giving her this gift. So there's Doug telling me, and that's his book. And that book is available at the bookstore. And that was one of my Bibles for how to do things appropriately. He also has a lot of webinars online on YouTube. He's great. And if you can make it to the garden club, I would strongly encourage it, because he's inspiring. And he also loves E.O. Wilson. So if you want to look up the E.O. Wilson documentary, that's another one that we would certainly recommend. And he always says, a little less lawn, native plants, no pesticides, and a safer shoreline. And that's how restoration begins. I mean, there are reasons for the staggering declines that we're seeing. So now I want you to pretend, everybody ready? Pretend you're a robin. You're flying over these two houses. Where do you want to live? Do you want to live at Monticello? Or do you want to live in the green one with the habitat and the water and the trees? I'm hoping you pick the one on the left. Because that's the thing, is that we didn't know. I mean, I think we all thought this was a status symbol. We all did it. It was important. And I did it, no question. And I never had a leaf. I never did anything. I had an ornamental tree. I was neighbor yard until I wasn't. Now I'm the other one. And so that's the point, is that's what the birds and the wildlife needs. They need our help with this. And I think that it's pretty easy to see how you can do this. And it's not that you have to do it all in a day. But the question is, can you do something? Because if we don't, what is the outcome? And I know what E.O. Wilson is saying is the outcome, but I'm not going to even go there. So there. Whose house looks like the before? You don't have to admit it. None of you have to admit that. But we can all do the after. That's the thing. There's a pollinator island with a tree, and all its native plants. And it doesn't have to be all that. But what a beautiful change with native plants in a way to make a beautiful, beautiful change to the property. And there's the oak tree. And that oak tree, supports 500 species of caterpillars, but 900 species. It's the most important tree in our forest. And Doug also wrote a book called The Power of Oaks or The Nature of Oaks. Do you remember which one that was? The Power of Oaks. Well, it's got a black cover and an oak tree. Anyway, it tells you all about the oak tree by month. And it's a fascinating book. And it explains to you why that is our most important tree. So if you do just one tree, just one thing this year, sneak an oak tree over onto some town property and see if they catch you and let it grow. I'm kidding. So this is the next part of what we were doing with the pesticides, because I think a lot of the problem we have is that as much as I'm against legislation, typically, I don't want more laws. I think we have plenty. There's a layer of this that doesn't work unless you have protection. And that's when there's water and air are things we all share. We have it in common. Everything from that tiny zooplankton and to the butterflies, the fish, to us, we all count on all of that being clean so that we can live. It keeps us alive, all of us. And it's legislation that makes that happen. When somebody would contaminate, or something would contaminate property that's away from ours and gets to our property, then we need help. And so before I go any further, that's when I would like to introduce our representative from town, John McDonald. He's moving pesticide legislation forward, which has proven to be more than challenging. But he stayed steady, he stayed strategic, and he's committed to seeing it through, thank goodness, because it's a battle, and it's a battle that's not over. For those who don't know Representative McDonald, he was born here. He spent his life here, first on the Marine Patrol, then as a state trooper, and now as our state representative. He knows the lakes. He understands that protecting them isn't political, that these bugs don't vote, and the lakes belong to all of us. This work is about protecting what we all love in our way of life. So, John, if you'd like to come up here, I'd like to have you update all of us.
Thank you. Hi, folks. My name is John McDonald. I represent the citizens of Wolfeboro and Tuftonboro. I'm on the vice chairman of the Municipal and County Government Committee. There are 22 committees in the House, 400 members, and 24 senators. A couple of bills that I did this year concerning cyanobacteria. The first one was an increase in the fee for moorings. Right now, there are 5 major lakes and 2 other lakes that you're required to have a mooring permit. The mooring fee since 1986 has been $25. And I put a bill in to increase it to $50, with $25 going to the Marine Patrol and $25 going to the cyanobacteria account. That went into the Recreation Committee. They increased it to $75. And that was unanimously passed, 20-0. It went onto the House floor and passed the House floor. and then it moved on to the Senate. The second bill I put in concerning cyanobacteria was a bill to deal with some of the floats that we have on the lakes, the big, large floats. And as we all know, those lakes belong to who? All of us. And they're putting private property on public land, public waters. So I put a bill in there for a $50 fee for all the lakes, $25 going to the Boating Safety Fund, and $25 going to the Cyanobacteria Fund. That made it through the Recreation Committee unanimously, and after that it went to the Finance Committee. And that was a little bit of a battle, and they came out with a decision that is BITL'd, meaning the bill is dead. It's not going to go anywhere. So what happens then, it goes before the whole House, and I have to be prepared to present a presentation to why we need this. And before the presentation, one of my colleagues got up and made a motion to table it, which would put it on the table, and it's about impossible to get something off the table. So I had to speak against why we shouldn't table it. I was successful for that. The table motion failed, and I did an ought to pass motion, and that passed. And then it moved on to the Senate. When we got to the Senate, what do you think happened? Both bills were killed. I think their thinking was that they have their own bill, but it's going to set up a commission that was going to study all these issues. What's the best way to fund it? I think there's 9 senators, and I'm also a sponsor, just to play it safe in case something happened in the Senate. And that bill's gone through the House, and I believe it's probably heading to the governor's office. But that'd be a good commission. They'll do some funding, hopefully, to find out the proper way to fund these things, some type of revenue. I think it was 3 years ago, Senator Bradley put in $1 million for the Cyanobacteria Fund, and that's down to about $200,000. The biggest project was Lake Kanasaka, and I think that cost about $400,000 to treat that lake. So I'm working on that, getting that funding in there, and hopefully we'll come up with something, because there was no money put in this year's budget to fund it. I work a lot with New Hampshire Lakes, the Lake Wentworth Watershed, and many other groups. How many people do you think I have on my staff to help me? 0. So we have to do a lot of work on our own. The big thing is with bills, what I try to do is there's going to be people that like the bill, and there's going to be people that don't like the bill. So I try to work with the different groups. Like New Hampshire Lakes, I went and talked to them about what your membership feel about this fees, increasing these fees, and they were 100% supportive of it. And then Tanya approached me about a year ago on neonicotinoids, and I'm going to refer to them as neonics because it's easier to say. And I did some research, and I said, geez, this is going to be a real problem for New Hampshire. So I worked with Tanya, and we also contacted some folks that we thought would probably oppose it, like the applicators. And what happens, I took the bill, I went to the pesticide board, because that's what I try to do, is talk to the agency that might be affected by it. So the commissioner set up 3 people, a few members of the board, to meet with me, and we came up with a bill. And everyone goes, oh, this is good, this is good. So we go to the committee, and what do you think happens? Nah, it's not good, John. There were some other things, but you wouldn't believe the people that contacted me. The pressure-treated wood people. Because what do you think they treat the wood with? Neonics. And they just came out of the woodwork. We had the applicators pretty much on board with everything. So we did the committee, went to the committee, Agriculture Committee. They did some amendments, and then we went to the Senate. And the pesticide board was stressing, and everyone was saying, we're the experts, we're the experts. Okay, you're the experts. Why aren't you doing anything about this? Why does it take legislation? So I went to the Senate, and the Senate said no, but they did give a stern warning to the pesticide board that they better address this issue. So Tanya kindly made out a petition asking for the pesticide board to look at a couple of things. Restricted use and turf applications. Those appear to be the two main things that are damaging our lake, on the turf, and then having someone put it on that's not trained on how to do it. We have a hearing coming up on May 18th at 9:30 down the pesticide board. I ask you all to come to that. It's very important that we have a good turnout, okay? Whenever you get a bill, if you get a warrant, what do they call those, an alert from Lake Wentworth Association, or Lake Wentworth, the group there, or New Hampshire Lakes, or you see something on Facebook that I post, the best thing you can do, the only thing you can do, is send an email into the committee and say, I'm against this or I'm for this. The best thing you can do is come down to Concord and testify, or just sign the sheet saying that I support this or I'm against this. Because we do look at that. If I get an opinion, an email from someone from California saying, no, I don't want you to do this, John, do I pay any attention to it? No, because it's from California. He doesn't come up here in the summertime. He's just giving his opinion on something that's happening in New Hampshire. Okay, what happened on the neonics? The Senate told the pesticide board to deal with it, okay? Tanya filed a petition, and we've come back from a response from the commissioner, who's head of the pesticide board, that he's going to deny the petition, that they're already addressing it. And there's a lot of rights and protections that Tanya has in the regulations and the laws as far as what they can deny the petition for. That's why, I'd like to ask you, I'm going to be there, and hopefully my colleagues that are like-minded on this, and I've asked some other people to come. Best thing we can do is fill that room and show the folks on the pesticide board that they've got to stand up and deal with this, because it's not unrealistic expectations. Yes, sir.
And you initiated that bill in mind?
Yes.
What was that number?
Do you remember the
1431.
Yeah. That bill is gone. That's gone.
But if you want to look, I have a copy too. If you'd like me to email it to you, I can send it to you. We did two bills. There was also 1086.
Right, dealing with the neonic spraying of the seeds. Right now, the federal government doesn't tell the manufacturer of the seeds what they can put on and what they can't put on the seeds. So they can put anything they want on the seeds. When the neonics are getting sprayed with that on the seeds themselves. And there's been no real proof that those improve the growing.
John, I think the other thing that was important that John uncovered from the Fish and Game, New Hampshire Fish and Game in 2017 banned the use of neonics on any property they owned or managed. And the Pesticide Control Board was part of that. So they are fully aware that this is a troubling chemical, to say the least. And so when John found that document and presented that, I'll let you finish the story.
It was a surprise to them because we dug it out and found the information. We still find information now. Like we find the study that was done in 2019 that explained it on the dangers of neonics, and we can't find out whatever happened to it. We can get copies of it, but we don't know where it went.
Okay, the question was, did other states enact any legislation? And the answer is yes, across the board. Massachusetts is working on theirs right now. Vermont, like you said, they're doing their corn-treated seed, and they've done some neonic regulations. New York has already done theirs. Quebec banned their seed on all their seeds and all their treatments of pesticides. That started this year for everything, but it was like 8 years they've done no treated seeds, and their yields are fine. The corn crops are fine. So there's a lot of precedent here.
Yes, sir.
Question for those people, those members of the pesticide board, and you ask them if they have any kind of tie-in with pesticides or any kind of bans, and they recuse themselves from being, so if they've got a vested interest in keeping the status quo,
right?
Why should they be able to vote? They shouldn't be able to.
No, they're all
John,
professionals. What happens is when they create a board, the governor tells who's going to be on the board. Like most of them, they're appointed, given the authority from the Commissioner of Agriculture, the Commissioner of Fish and Game, and they represent that particular department on the board. The folks that worked with me at several meetings we had on the bill that I finally put in was from this public interest, the lady public interest. Was she the state bug lady, ophthalmologist, whatever you want to call it?
The entomologist was from the extension service.
Yeah.
So she was a state entomologist. And then you had the woman that was represented the public. And then you had the guy, Carl Lombard, who was
Natural Resources.
Yeah.
And we met and we talked and we wrote out the bill. And I thought it was going to be a go. And then it kind of tanked. The Agriculture Committee changed it, and then went to the Senate, and that was it.
But we don't know any of their financial background as far as like who might have vested interest in a chemical or seed company.
Yeah.
But we don't know why, after this is, the Pesticides Board, it's their duty to protect New Hampshire lands, and why after all these years and all this legislation and attempts, why they are resisting so strongly, it's very hard to understand.
Maybe a financial interest.
You would think, but we don't know.
You got to understand that it's not, we want to save the waters, but we've also got people that are farmers that have got it in their brain that they've got to use this stuff. And we had someone from the seed company come and testify, and they're very, very powerful with the farmers.
Well, the seed companies are actually owned by like Bayer, who also did DDT, Agent Orange, glyphosate. It's all the same company, and they had a representative there.
So if we fill the room, you think they will honestly pay attention?
I would if I was on the board. Yeah, and I think I have other people. If I invited colleagues that I work with, both Republican and Democrat, to be there. I've spoken to Executive Council Joe Kenny and asked him to come. Because I think the more people we put there, the better off we're going to be honest with you. Yes, sir.
Any conversations along this nature taking place within our education system? I mean, we're talking about the next generation following up on what you're trying to do, and if we don't start there, someone else like you could have this conversation 10 years ago.
Right. Tanya and Bob gave you want to talk about that class that you gave to the
yes,
kids?
and John was actually there. We went to Kingswood and talked to the juniors and seniors about a week ago. And so when John asked them, what do they think he makes for pay? This is a very funny question. What do you think John makes for pay? Everybody here probably knows. Do you know how much he's paid a year? Okay. Well, $100. So but the kids there thought, maybe it was 100,000. So to give you a scale of what they don't understand. But we were educating them about the issue and trying to let them know what's going on. But they were, I wouldn't say they were enthusiastic about it. They didn't seem pulsed by it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Back when there was a ban, I think in my first term, they wanted to ban plastic bags. And they asked me to come by. Eden Maris was the other rep, and pro and con. And I went up and gave a talk to the kids, and I brought some different things that you have plastic in. And I said, okay, how are we going to replace this? And they go, what do you mean? Well, if we ban this, what are we going to use instead of this? And they go, paper bags. And then before paper bags, we hated paper bags. We went to plastic. So it's back and forth. But I won't get into plastics, but they're working on those to shorten the time that they decay in the ground. So, and plus recycling is helping out, the plastic bottles and things like that. But my primary focus for this year or next year will be cyanobacteria and getting something on the neonics through. A lot of times, like one of the pesticide boards says, well, if we ban this, it's going to be something worse. I said, well, guess what you can do? You can ban that also. That's what your job is. But any other questions? Yes, sir.
Where do you find the mosquito dump?
Bradley's has them. And I have some here tonight that are free. I'll give you one.
Yeah. Again, the last thing is I really urge you, if you can't come down to Concord to the pesticide board, is if you see a bill that you've got questions about, call me, call Katie Petnell, she's currently in office, and also Bobby Budman. Any other questions, folks? Hope to see you all on May 18th at 1 Granite Place at the Pesticide Control Board meeting, 9:30. Yeah. If I can just ask one thing, can we give Tanya and Bob a big applause, because they've really done a lot.
Marcy brought up a good point when you're asking about other places that have regulated this chemical. The European Union stopped it 10 years ago. I mean, Europe is way ahead of us. Canada. I mean, why the United States is so far behind, I don't know. But when John first went to the Pesticide Control Board, it was very interesting that they put a video like this up for he and I and Bob to watch on the fact that they use the EPA for all their guidance. Like, okay. The EPA doesn't always succeed. They've had 10 years to study this, and they're still debating it, and you still have to send your letter in to the EPA. But he was like reassuring us that that was enough, that the EPA was enough, because the EPA has done nothing on the neonicotinoids, which is why 17 states total have regulated neonics in the United States so far. So, and if you're looking for other documentation, like Cornell, Scott McCart at Cornell put together the biggest number of reports. He took 800 of them and synthesized the contents of the tests and studies and came up with a report showing just how much damage from treated corn seed, from aquatic environments, the lakes, all the damages. So that's a great report to look at. And Colorado also did a great report, which is called Seed We Need. And they have lots of reports there, which will show that in Bob's hometown, the river there, when they finally tested the river, it was over 100 times over the EPA limit for toxicity in that river when they finally tested it. So you want to know how much testing's been done in New Hampshire? 1. The USGS did a test 10 years ago of the Merrimack River, which they have conveniently lost or somehow lost. And so we don't have any documentation for this. We called the DES to say, could you test? Because we want to know what's happening in New Hampshire. They said, well, we're very, very busy. Okay, so we've called a lot of different, USGS. We've tried to find other groups that would do the testing. Ultimately, we could not find anybody that would take the time to test what's in our water. Now, I can only guess at why they won't test our water to find out how much our portion of neonics are. When you, like I said, there's 2 of these coffee cans contaminate Lake Wentworth. I'd like to know. And, what's changing in our lakes? I'd like to know. Ultimately, some testing happened last fall. Steve Johnson and Bob went out and we sent it to the labs, and Lake Wentworth, Crescent Lake, Harvey Brook, they were all tested positive for neonics, and that was months after the last application of pesticides were even put out. The applicators usually stop around October. This test was in November. Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how expensive that test?
I do. I paid for it. It's $100. This lab gave us a discount of $100. This lab that did it because we told them that we were trying to get some information off the ground.
What would you take?
It depends which lab. There's only a few labs in the country that do it, but they usually run about 300. And we wanted to do a baseline and then do a series from there. So, where do you live on the water?
Close to it.
Okay, so if you tell us we're going to distribute these test information, it'll probably take us till about September to get all the results back and do the layer of tests that they suggested we do. And I'm happy to distribute that information. There's also a sheet that you can sign up that was going around on a little ladybug on a pen. If you put your name and email on that and tell me what you want me to send you, I'll send you anything you need, if it's reports or anything, or that bill. Sure.
On the national level, don't you think estimation of the EPA and a lot of those committees and administrations have that?
No, this predates that. So I think that while it isn't helpful.
But they're not taking it on.
That would be true. That's absolutely true. They're not taking it on at this point. And all the states are still going after it individually. So that's true. The question is it just this administration? The answer is no, it is not. So we can't isolate it and just say, okay, this is the bad one. It doesn't mean he's right. It doesn't mean he's doing a good thing. It just means it isn't started here, So, okay, now let's get back to Mother's Day. How about that? So, things you can do for Mother's Day. You can go to the bookstore and you can buy Doug Tallamy's book. You can go buy some native plants. You can buy a light bulb. You can go rake up your mom's lawn or your grandmother's lawn right now because it's finally warm enough that it's okay to rake. And you can spread the word. I think that's another thing, is telling your neighbor. We have some cards there that, if you want to be like arm's length from someone and you'd like them to shut their light off or not spray, these fit in the mailbox. So there's a whole bunch over there if you want to take some for your neighbors. And that's a good way not to say, well, I don't know who put it there, And supporting the legislation is important because it's been a tough fight. We thought it was, well, I wouldn't say John thought this because he knows these things, but I don't. I've never done legislation before. I've never been involved in this stuff before. And I thought it's so obvious. Every bit of science that we studied, every report we read validated this information. We looked for other alternative information to beat ourselves up because you want to know what the other side is. but we couldn't and have not found it. And so for the Pesticide Control Board to say, we don't want to take this on or to avoid it, it's very confusing, and sometimes it's disheartening. So if any of you are going to change your light bulb tonight or spray them, stop spraying or anything, let me know, because I need some encouragement once in a while. That's a sample of the card that you can put in the mailbox. What do you think? Pretty good, huh? Okay, then we got our fireflies. These are another one that they're dear to my heart. Because if you close your eyes for just a second, you think back when you were a kid, how special was it? You go outside with your mason jar and you catch them and you bring it in the house. And invariably, at least one would escape, and that drove your father crazy. But the rest of them would be in there, and they'd be twinkling away, and it was great. But where are our fireflies now? And fireflies, they're important. They're important for the next generation. And all you have to do is, they live in the leaves. So that leaf litter, they're another thing that all winter long, that's where they overwinter. And then pesticides, that kills them. And the third thing that drives them crazy, makes it die hard for them, is light. They have their own little light bulbs. They do not want our light bulbs. So we need to, cover up our windows and turn off the lights and help our fireflies. So I told you that the dragonfly, I'm so amazed that he's been around here for 3 million years, and they hunt with 95% accuracy. Don't you think that's amazing? Why would you kill something like that instead by mosquito spray? I'd rather have the dragonfly. So they're like, I love it. They're like living missiles. And mulch. Mulch is another thing to be aware of, that, the best mulch that you can put around your property is the leaf litter that you have. That makes great. That's meant to be there. It goes back into the soils, and that's great mulch. Plastic mulch is not a friendly thing to put around. When you put in the weed barrier fabrics, then the things like the native bees can't dig through it to make a home. So those are the things that are difficulty. Most mulch is dyed. That's tricky. And if you need to do something other than your leaves, you could go get some straw. You could get some wood chips that aren't dyed. I know they sell some that are not dyed over at in Ossipee at Bear Camp. So on a positive note, we can do this if we actually get to work and tell our neighbors and work on it. Hope is not lost yet. We've had devastating losses to nature, but they're here. They're still trying. So I think we can do our part and help them. So Jane Goodall is someone that I think a lot of, and we have a little video from there, but what I'd like to just tell you is she spent her life reminding us that every individual matters. She said that what you do makes a difference. You have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And I'm choosing fireflies. I'm choosing native plants. I'm choosing a clean lake. And I hope this presentation tonight helps you choose.
Firstly, we live on a planet that is filled with so much beauty. From tropical forest to alpine meadow, from desert to wetland, from mighty ocean to mountain stream. A planet that supports so many amazing life forms, from the hardy oak and pine tree to the most delicate flower, from the huge blue whale to the tiniest insect. A planet that has created an extraordinarily intelligent animal, an animal that has invented technology that allows us to descend to the depths of the ocean and allows us to travel into space in order to take these amazing photographs of our home, our only home. Although there may be another planet that can support life as we know it, that planet is far away and for now unreachable and unknowable. Planet Earth is almost certainly the only home we shall ever know. So how is it possible that despite our wonderful brains, we are destroying this beautiful home of ours? Clearly, our intellect has led us astray. We've forgotten wisdom. It's only, I think, when head and heart work in harmony that we can truly attain our full human potential. I just hope that seeing these fantastic and unforgettable images will help people understand the urgency of working together to restore that which we have destroyed. to heal the wounds we have inflicted on planet Earth, a beautiful blue and green home.
So I want to thank you, John, for showing up tonight to help with this information, and Marcy for helping set up, and Greg, Greg came back from his time away, so we're so glad to have Greg back in town. And these are some of our supporters that we work with, some of the organizations. And the Parks and Rec allowed us to be here tonight, which we appreciate that they would do this for us. And Bob, thank you, Bob. The brownies, you guys, if you haven't had a brownie, you've missed out, because these are Bob's brownies, and he makes a mean brownie. So some of you missed supper, I'm sure. You might want to take a brownie with you. And the cookies were from Katie, made great cookies too. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
So run the process again as far as
Leaves? Okay.
When do I wait and when do I not? So fall, like it's not fall, weekly.
And if you need a nice clean walkway to the house, you just rake them nicely into a pile, just gently. The blower is what kills them. So you can move them nicely off into the side of your lawn. But you wait springtime until they've emerged, because you've got all that life living there.
Right now.
It's still a little cold. I'm waiting until next week, because I want it to be 50 degrees for a few days in a row. But
Because I was cutting the grass and I told my stop.
Good job, Gail. Any other? For the pollinators to emerge, it's supposed to be like 4 days of 50 degrees. Yeah, so that's what that I read. Yeah. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, no, I heard this guard that you should not cut our lawn.
That's right, no mow May. Yeah, mine's clover now, but yeah, no mow May is.
Clover is a good thing.
Yep. Enhances it, and that's a lot less maintenance, and it's drought proof. So clover's a great alternative. So there's another way to go. Lawn is not the answer. According to Doug Tallamy, if we all got rid of our lawns, we would have enough to cover the entire of New England. That's how much lawn is in the United States. But if we converted that back to native plants and what he's asking us to do, that we could turn the whole thing around with our own homegrown national parks, is what he calls it. So the table has a lot of information too, and if there's paperwork over there that I've run out of, just put your name on that clipboard, and I'll make sure I'll send you stuff. I have more at home. But thank you.